Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is from the corner of your eye in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 26, Finals, Part 4. Sasuke doesn't understand. He's been feeling like that more and more, lately, between the mysteries that surround Naruto, between Kabuto and Orochimaru and the strange discrepancies in Konoha and him. It feels like he's always a little lost, always a step behind on the uptake, and he doesn't like it. Not one little bit. The boy stares ahead, stares at the spot where Naruto had been when he was fighting the Hyuga, completely ignoring the now ongoing fight between Rock and the Sand Genin, and tries to think. Naruto, who had such strange stamina, such easy healing, and now strange power out of nowhere. Karin, who could heal so very easily, who had more stamina than he would expect from her. Red hair, Kakashi had said, and he thinks of that strangely powerful Sand Genin, of Gaara, and he wonders. You're not the only one who's special. Naruto had snapped at Hyuga, and Sasuke wants to wring his teammate's neck until he tells him the flat, honest truth. Does he have a bloodline? Is there something from the Uzumaki clan? Given how little Naruto knows about his clan, it would make sense that he didn't know before, when Sasuke had commented on it last time. But he glances at Karin, just a seat down from him, and considers asking her because she clearly knows a lot more than Naruto does, but she is very, very intently watching the match. Completely ignoring Sakura still engaging Kabuto right next to her. That's right, Rock had spoken to her before Naruto reached out. Glancing at Karin means that he does look beyond, though, and he realizes that Team 8 isn't there. He's not certain where they went or when they went, but they're not there, none of them. Team 10 is out hunting for a teacher. The older Genin team, the Hyuga team, had not yet returned, which makes sense given all three of them are fighting in a row. So it's just Sakura, Sasuke, Karin, and Kabuto. Dread pools in his stomach, and even though to all of the world he looks intent, looks like he's fixated on the match, which is wind versus speed. Holy shit, what were in those weights? Naruto slides into the seat right between him and Karin, and Sasuke manages to tear his eyes away from the fight to look at him. Naruto beams at him. Hey, I kicked his ass, Sasuke. Now you gotta win your next match. He rolls his eyes. Don't worry about me. I'll win it. Sakura glances over, and gives him a smile. That was really great, Naruto. I knew you could do it, she says, as if she hadn't been on edge the entire match, just like him. Kabuto smiles as well, but there's no warmth in it like Sakura's. I underestimated you. Congratulations, Naruto. Drawing upon that was unexpected. Naruto's smile freezes just a little bit, as does Karin's, and God, Sasuke wants to know the undercurrents so bad. What does Kabuto mean? The fact that Karin understands what Kabuto is talking about, what Naruto did, is another tick in the Uzumaki heritage column, but he doesn't know for sure, and it's so very frustrating. He's not stupid enough to ask about it in front of Kabuto, though, to even bring it up like it's something to be surprised by, and so he rolls his eyes. Shut up, he tells them, without any heat in his voice. I'm watching the match. His teammate relaxes, just a little bit, next to him, and Sasuke knows deflection was the right choice. Rock wins, of course. The Sand Genin is definitely good, may perhaps get promoted to Chunin despite her loss on skills alone, but Rock is fast, so intensely fast, especially without his weights, and Sasuke wonders how on earth Naruto is going to beat him. To be fair, his teammate always pulls surprising things out of his hat, but there's surprising and there's beating an opponent that's too fast to see with the Sharingan. He did only try for a brief few seconds, though, because he doesn't want to waste chakra. But that means Sakura is pale, when he looks over, pale and determined and hands clenched into fists, and she gets up and gives them all a fake, closed eyes smile. I'll see you in a little bit, she says. Kabuto adjusts his glasses. Good luck, Sakura, he says, and Sasuke hates him a little more because he doesn't think the older Genin means a single word of that. Naruto looks so terribly concerned, and Karin echoes that, and Sasuke doesn't know what kind of expression he has on his face, but he might look the same, too. Sakura, Karin says, and she stops. Are you sure you don't want to forfeit? She shakes her head. No. I've got a plan. Her smile turns a little more real, now, and she meets each of their gazes, one by one. Cheer me on. Me and Kakashi-sensei worked something out, something really good, and I'm going to win this. It's going to be all three of us in the finals, just watch. A tiny bit guiltily, Sasuke realizes he hadn't even considered Sakura when talking about how he and Naruto are making it to the end. Mostly because he hasn't thought she could win this. But. She walks away, headed down to fight, and Sasuke watches her leave. When these exams started, he had been kidding himself. I don't want to figure out how to work with another person for the exams, he had told himself, and he had been lying. He remembers her fight against Ino, wondering what happened in the forest while he was out, and now. Sasuke watches Sakura's back, and wonders when she clawed her way up to the same level as the rest of Team 7. Kabuto doesn't matter right now. Nor does Orochimaru. The Snake Man could probably get right up in all of Team 7's faces, because Karen is a part of Team 7 now, he realizes, she's an honorary member, and they would just shove him aside because right now they're focused on the final member of their team. On Sakura, standing in the middle of the arena, right across from Gaara. I've got a plan, she had said, and Sasuke desperately hopes it's a very, very good one because she's going to need it. If Sakura doesn't make it, if she dies here. Sasuke. He will. He doesn't think he can lose someone else. She's ready, fingers twitching and leg back and ready to spring into action, start whatever her plan may be, and Gaara just stands there, with that twisted smile of his. It sends chills up Sasuke's spine. If the Sand Genin is, indeed, a Uzumaki, he's a completely different brand than the two sitting by Sasuke's side. Begin, says the proctor, and Sakura moves. She bolts away from Gaara, running almost to the other end of the arena, and Sasuke wants to yell at her that running will do nothing, that he will still get her like this, but she's flying through a set of hand signs so fast he can't tell what they are, stopping at a dime near the wall and slamming her hands against the ground, and a pillar of rock shoots her upwards about 7 feet, so she's towering over Gaara and everyone else. Naruto's already moved to the railing, yelling encouragement, and Sasuke stumbles to his feet and does the same, gripping to the railing like a lifeline, and Karen follows a beat behind, taking her place on his other side. Sakura has bought herself time, certainly, but how is she going to win this? How is she going to get out of this without dying? How? She pulls out a scroll from a pouch around her waist, and stands there, narrow-eyed, watching Gaara, not moving. Sasuke redirects his gaze, and sees that Gaara hasn't moved. He's standing there, right where he was before, his sand billowing around him. Watching. It's probably the thrill of the chase for him, the thrill of the fight, like playing shinobi and civilian, and Sasuke grits his teeth so hard his jaw aches. When it becomes clear that Sakura isn't doing anything, is waiting for something, though, Gaara's sand shoots forward. It's so fast. So terribly fast, and he can hear Karen near about swallow a scream next to him, and Sakura just stands there watching. What is she waiting for? Just move. What she's waiting for, apparently, is to have the most sand close to her as possible. Sakura waits until she's just a few feet away from death to toss open the scroll, throw it up into the air, and out gushes water. It's a deluge of it, like an entire ocean has been sealed away in this scroll. Sasuke gapes. Sakura is protected from the water, standing on her pillar as she is, but Gaara throws up a wall of sand to shield himself from the water, but that does nothing. Sand does nothing against water, and the wave crashes through his shield, knocking the boy to the ground and for a split second, under the water before he shoves himself up, gasping for air. He looks like an angry, dripping cat, and Sasuke is gripped by the hysterical thought that he's probably never seen this much water in his life before. He's from Suna. Sand. Desert. Sakura might actually win this. Now that the roar of water has stopped, you could hear a pin drop in the arena. The audience is silent. Sasuke grips the railing so tight it's painful. Didn't he do this last time he watched Sakura fight? And the two combatants stare at each other. Because they're the last first-round contestants to go, the battlefield has been broken up. Marked. It's no longer even, and a lot of the water has disappeared down the hole that Naruto dug when he fought Neji, as well as into the little indentations and pockets from rocks kicks shattering the ground. There's a few spots where puddles have collected, but for the most part, it's just mud, just sand turned into mud sprawled all across the arena. Gaara looks furious. Udeshi he starts to say in that horrible rasp of a growl of his, but Sakura doesn't even let him finish. She pops a soldier pill into her mouth, and tosses up another scroll. It's very clear she took inspiration from the older genin, Tenten, and Sasuke can't help but approve, for this time, a net comes flying out. A metal one, in an old-fashioned spiderweb sort of pattern he hasn't seen before, but it doesn't hit Gaara. No, this one falls in about the middle of the arena, closer to Sakura, honestly, and Karen whispers oh, no, beside him. But Sasuke doesn't think it missed. Sakura doesn't miss a beat, so he's very positive that it was part of her plan. She's already starting to fly through some hand signs when, Sakura, look out! Naruto yells, and oh no. Gaara isn't willing to sit still while his opponent sets up whatever she plans on doing. That'd be too easy. They had all underestimated him, that with his sand turned to mud, with his sand deluged with water, that he wouldn't be able to do anything. That he'd be too slow, or that he wouldn't be able to use it, or what. And maybe it did affect him, because he looks like he is so fiercely concentrating, putting forward so much effort to lift the sand, to have a single strand come up from behind Sakura and wrap around her ankle and yank. She goes down with a scream, pulled down off her pillar and down below, and even with the mud there to cushion her fall that had to have hurt, but there's no real time to even think about that. The mud sand whatever is already moving, and yes, it's slower than before Sakura let loose the water, and beads of sweat are forming on Gaara's brow, but it's still moving to trap Sakura, to wrap her up in the sand and probably kill her. Sasuke can see it, on her face. She makes a decision. Whipping through hand seals as the sand starts to surround her, Sakura reaches out one hand to touch the very end of that metal net she had launched, and there's light. Lightning sparks from her palm to the metal, and it travels all along the net, travels all along the wet sand and through the entire arena. Sakura screams, barely visible in the sand and the light and the smoke that's rising as she writhes, and Sasuke thinks that horrible sound is Gaara screaming as well as he falls to his knees, and there's smoke and sand everywhere and he can't see a thing, and everyone is rising to their feet, straining to look, waiting for the smoke to clear, and the sand has turned to a mottled brown glass. Chapter 27, Finals End, Invasion begins. The smoke clears. Gaara kneels, half choking for breath as he wheezes, chips of glass falling from his face and his body. He had a sand covering of sorts, it seems, and the boy throws up, and Sasuke thinks the glass might be down his throat. The tunnel of glass where Sakura had been lays still, quiet, for just a moment, before there's a crack. And another, and she bursts out of her trap and barely manages to catch herself and stand. Sakura looks terrible. Her short hair hangs around her head like some sort of static halo, like she's an avenging angel of sorts. Her clothes are singed, and every inch of her visible skin looks mottled, dark, raw. She's clearly burnt, but Sasuke isn't educated enough in medical arts to know how badly. Despite that, though, she walks. Step by step, she walks across the arena, across the sand that cracks just lightly under her foot. Sakura is exhausted. This much is clear. Sasuke isn't certain that she'll last another match, but he'll be genuinely astonished if this one isn't enough to promote her to Chunin. She stops in front of the kneeling Gaara. Forfeit, she says, and oh does her voice rasp, did she even electrocute her vocal cords, but she's loud enough for everyone to hear, completely audible. I've won. Gaara doesn't twitch. Forfeit, Sakura says again, louder, and she shoves him. He falls over, on his side, and he's staring at nothing. Straight ahead, at absolutely nothing, and she turns back to look at the proctor. Have I won? He had leapt up to stand on the railing at the first sign of water, and now he hops back down to the ground. The man chews his senbon thoughtfully. I suppose so, he says slowly, like he never expected this kind of outcome, and Sasuke can't really blame him for his surprise, if he cannot dash. Sasuke is too far to hear, too far to know what sound was made, but Sakura and the proctor turn to stare at Gaara. Sakura falls back into a defensive position, and Gaara speaks again. This time, Sasuke can hear. "Mother," Gaara says, and it's a horrible aching rasp, his already freakish vocal cords sounding even worse from the effect of the lightning. "Mother!" he screams, and Karen claps her hands over her ears next to Sasuke. "Mother!" And the entire ground upheaves. They had underestimated him. Again. Again, this genin does more than they think possible, and Sasuke can't help but wonder what brand of monster he is. Because he's controlling the glass. The boy slowly pushes himself to his feet, and the glass that Sakura had so carefully planned for rips itself free from the ground. Chunks of dirt go flying. Large pieces of glass swirl around and around like a mini tornado, crashing into each other and breaking everything down into smaller and smaller pieces. There's no real place for Sakura to go, no real spot to run, but she bolts for it anyway. Runs for her pillar and hunkers down behind it as a shield and waits for the storm to pass, barely visible in the swirling glass. Gaara is laughing, and it's definitely up there on Sasuke's sounds that should not exist list, crazed and half-mad and every other synonym for insane that exists. "Sakura," murmurs Naruto, and he looks over at Sasuke, brow furrowed. "That guy's on a whole nother level. We need to stop this match." Sasuke shakes his head, sharply. "Too late," he says, and he's right. The only thing that can stop this match is Sakura forfeiting, or Sakura dying. He doesn't think she'll beat Gaara anymore, not like this. Glass crashes into glass, shattering and breaking until Gaara has naught but the smallest fragments circling around in the air. It's like he has his sand back, except that it's deadlier. The boy reaches out his hand, palm up, fingers hooked, and jerks back. The glass follows, whipping around his feet, and his grin is grotesque. "Don't worry," he says, folding his hands together and starting an unfamiliar sequence of seals. "I'll give you some fresh blood, mother." The glass rises up. It spreads, it surrounds him in this strange ball of glittering glass, reflecting the sunlight in various directions, and then all is still. There's nothing to be heard from within the ball. Sasuke has no idea if the boy is even breathing. Cautiously, a kunai clutched in one raw hand, Sakura forces herself to her feet and limps around the pillar. Nothing happens. The pink-haired girl stares across the arena for a long moment, at this strange glass ball that holds Gaara within, and then she looks down at herself. She's barely hanging on, and she turns slightly to look at the proctor. "I forfeit," she says. He stares at her, lifts an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" Sakura nods, grimacing. "Yes." She glances over at where the other genin is, silent, doing something decidedly ominous within his glass, and drops her kunai with a sigh. It embeds in the upturned earth, and the proctor shrugs. "Okay," he says, seemingly uncaring. Harano Sakura dash. Everything happens at once. The sound of an explosion rips through the stadium. Sasuke turns, wide-eyed, just in time to see one of the levels collapse, people screaming as an entire floor caves in and then abruptly stop. Something's holding it up, and the boy can already see the ninja in that area moving, darting so quickly over the crowd and starting to pull people away, and feathers start to fall on the crowd, little light things that make Sasuke sway before he snaps his eyes open in the Sharingan, dispelling it from him in an instant. Karen yells "Kai!" next to him, having realized just as soon as he did, and Sasuke reaches out and pinches Naruto's hand so hard that he yelps and his drooping blue eyes fly wide, and there's another explosion, a cluster of smoke bursting forth from the area that Sasuke recognizes as being the Hokage box. Someone is attacking the Hokage and ninja immediately start moving in that direction, hopefully to stop what's going on there too. He tries to say something to his team, anything, but before he can even begin to think of where this is coming from, what's going on, what they should do, his seal starts to burn, crawling up his neck and down his arm, and he cries out, staggering backwards, and before his vision goes completely black, he sees an arm of glass whip out from the ball and knock Sakura off her feet. The smoke clears. Gaara kneels, half choking for breath as he wheezes, chips of glass falling from his face and his body. He had a sand covering of sorts, it seems, and the boy throws up, and Sasuke thinks the glass might be down his throat. The tunnel of glass where Sakura had been lays still, quiet, for just a moment, before there's a crack. And another, and she bursts out of her trap and barely manages to catch herself and stand. Sakura looks terrible. Her short hair hangs around her head like some sort of static halo, like she's an avenging angel of sorts. Her clothes are singed, and every inch of her visible skin looks mottled, dark, raw. She's clearly burnt, but Sasuke isn't educated enough in medical arts to know how badly. Despite that, though, she walks. Step by step, she walks across the arena, across the sand that cracks just lightly under her foot. Sakura is exhausted. This much is clear. Sasuke isn't certain that she'll last another match, but he'll be genuinely astonished if this one isn't enough to promote her to Chunin. She stops in front of the kneeling Gaara. Forfeit, she says, and oh does her voice rasp, did she even electrocute her vocal cords, but she's loud enough for everyone to hear, completely audible. I've won. Gaara doesn't twitch. Forfeit, Sakura says again, louder, and she shoves him. He falls over, on his side, and he's staring at nothing. Straight ahead, at absolutely nothing, and she turns back to look at the proctor. Have I won? He had leapt up to stand on the railing at the first sign of water, and now he hops back down to the ground. The man chews his senbon thoughtfully. I suppose so, he says slowly, like he never expected this kind of outcome, and Sasuke can't really blame him for his surprise, if he cannot dash. Sasuke is too far to hear, too far to know what sound was made, but Sakura and the proctor turn to stare at Gaara. Sakura falls back into a defensive position, and Gaara speaks again. This time, Sasuke can hear. Mother, Gaara says, and it's a horrible aching rasp, his already freakish vocal cords sounding even worse from the effect of the lightning. Mother! He screams, and Karen claps her hands over her ears next to Sasuke. Mother! And the entire ground upheaves. They had underestimated him. Again, this genin does more than they think possible, and Sasuke can't help but wonder what brand of monster he is. Because he's controlling the glass. The boy slowly pushes himself to his feet, and the glass that Sakura had so carefully planned for rips itself free from the ground. Chunks of dirt go flying. Large pieces of glass swirl around and around like a mini tornado, crashing into each other and breaking everything down into smaller and smaller pieces. There's no real place for Sakura to go, no real spot to run, but she bolts for it anyway. Runs for her pillar and hunkers down behind it as a shield and waits for the storm to pass, barely visible in the swirling glass. Gaara is laughing, and it's definitely up there on Sasuke's sounds that should not exist list, crazed and half-mad and every other synonym for insane that exists. Sakura, murmurs Naruto, and he looks over at Sasuke, brow furrowed. That guy's on a whole nother level. We need to stop this match. Sasuke shakes his head, sharply. Too late, he says, and he's right. The only thing that can stop this match is Sakura forfeiting, or Sakura dying. He doesn't think she'll beat Gaara anymore, not like this. Glass crashes into glass, shattering and breaking until Gaara has naught but the smallest fragments circling around in the air. It's like he has his sand back, except that it's deadlier. The boy reaches out his hand, palm up, fingers hooked, and jerks back. The glass follows, whipping around his feet, and his grin is grotesque. Don't worry, he says, folding his hands together and starting an unfamiliar sequence of seals. I'll give you some fresh blood, mother. The glass rises up. It spreads, it surrounds him in this strange ball of glittering glass, reflecting the sunlight in various directions, and then all is still. There's nothing to be heard from within the ball. Sasuke has no idea if the boy is even breathing. Cautiously, a kunai clutched in one raw hand, Sakura forces herself to her feet and limps around the pillar. Nothing happens. The pink-haired girl stares across the arena for a long moment, at this strange glass ball that holds Gaara within, and then she looks down at herself. She's barely hanging on, and she turns slightly to look at the proctor. I forfeit, she says. He stares at her, lifts an eyebrow. Are you sure? Sakura nods, grimacing. Yes. She glances over at where the other genin is, silent, doing something decidedly ominous within his glass, and drops her kunai with a sigh. It embeds in the upturned earth, and the proctor shrugs. Okay, he says, seemingly uncaring. Haruno Sakura dash. Everything happens at once. The sound of an explosion rips through the stadium. Sasuke turns, wide-eyed, just in time to see one of the levels collapse, people screaming as an entire floor caves in and then abruptly stop, something's holding it up, and the boy can already see the ninja in that area moving, darting so quickly over the crowd and starting to pull people away and feathers start to fall on the crowd, little light things that make Sasuke sway before he snaps his eyes open in the Sharingan, dispelling it from him in an instant. Karin yells Kai, next to him, having realized just as soon as he did, and Sasuke reaches out and pinches Naruto's hand so hard that he yelps and his drooping blue eyes fly wide and there's another explosion, a cluster of smoke bursting forth from the area that Sasuke recognizes as being the Hokage's box. Someone is attacking the Hokage and ninja immediately start moving in that direction, hopefully to stop what's going on there too. He tries to say something to his team, anything, but before he can even begin to think of where this is coming from, what's going on, what they should do, his seal starts to burn, crawling up his neck and down his arm, and he cries out, staggering backwards, and before his vision goes completely black, he sees an arm of glass whip out from the ball and knock Sakura off her feet. Chapter 28, Konoha Crush, Part 1. Sasuke crumples and Karin catches him. He's clutching at his neck, at the strange seal that Sakura and Naruto had told her about, but she has yet to see for herself, and she lowers him to the ground, gently. Her cousin is already shooting off clones to go help Sakura, and Karin looks up, meets his eyes, shakes her head. I've got him, she says. I know the most about medical jutsu, anyway. Go help Sakura. He hesitates, torn between his two teammates, torn between Sakura down below and Sasuke twitching up here, and curses quietly. Naruto slams his hands together, two more clones popping into existence next to him, and then he takes off down to the arena below. They both kneel next to her, the three of them watching that strange, black fire climb Sasuke's neck, appearing on his arm from under his sleeve. It's just the three of them. No one else is over here, and somehow that seems wrong, like she's forgetting something, but Karin can't remember right now. Is he gonna be okay? One clone asks, and Karin, I don't know, she says, as she presses one hand to his forehead. He's hot, so very hot. I don't know. It doesn't take three people to tell a single teacher about Kabuto, no matter how dire it is, so Shikamaru waves Ino away when she asks to watch Sakura fight. She sees Sakura's plan, sees her friend so injured, sees her friend forfeit, and rips away the genjutsu with a flying leap over the railing the moment that Sakura's swept off her feet. Sakura, she screams, and she's not fast enough to catch her, but she throws Kunao in the direction of Gaara without looking, scoops up her friend bridal style, and turns on her heel to face the crazed Genin. He's not alone, anymore. Glass coats half his side, one arm long and monstrous, and the side of his face is covered as well, just as terrifying. Demonic. Horrifying. Ino has no idea what kind of bullshit jutsu this is, and she's so pissed off that she has to deal with this at all. Especially since he's not alone anymore. Those other two Sand Genin and their teacher have hopped down to join him, and they're talking quietly, maybe trying to calm him down. And don't seem like they're going to attack soon. If Ino were like, a little smarter, maybe she'd hightail it out of Dodge. But she's a Yamanaka. She's smart. She's 13 years old and so very used to be underestimated. She's got a plan. Carefully, the girl sets Sakura down on the ground, who blinks blearily at her. Girl looks exhausted. Ino, she says, and the Yamanaka gives her a grin. Breathe for half a sec. I'll need your help soon. Sakura gives her a pained nod, forcing herself to sit up, and Ino's plan promptly falls apart when three Narutos appear from the sky to rush at the Sand Genin. Great. Just great. Naruto lands beside her, or is it another Naruto, not just Naruto? Fucking Team 7, and she shoots him a glare. He stares at her, bewildered. You messed up my plan, she says. Sorry. He glances over at the Sand Genin, who had popped his clones so very easily, and she rolls her eyes. Covering her mouth so that if the others are looking her way they can't read her lips, she whispers to him. I need you to keep the crazy one still. Keep him in the same spot for me. I've got a plan. Naruto's brow furrows. Are you sure? Hell, no, Ino isn't sure. But she nods anyway. Yes. He grins and nods back. Yeah. Let's go. With that, a dozen clones poof into existence around him. Again, what the hell, and he charges full tilt at the enemy, because that is apparently what's going on. What the fuck, Sand Ninja attacking. She can see fights starting up in the stands, Ninja vs Ninja, and she hopes her clan and her team are both okay, is glad that at least the other three are all together. Ino breathes, inhales, exhales, and starts gathering up her chakra. Niji's very first thought at the sound of the explosion is of Lady Hinata. It's startling. Very much so. But Lee and Tenten are both with him, both right alongside him watching the final first round of matches, and worrying about Guy is like worrying about a force of nature, so maybe it makes sense that his first thought is of his cousin. Hanabi is with her father, and as much as Niji has twisted, complicated feelings towards his uncle, he knows that he'll protect her. But Hinata? Is she even with her team right now? Team Guy looks at each other. They have several options. Several points of attack that are going on right now by. Niji sweeps the arena with his Byakugan, and pinpoints the enemy. It's the Sand Ninja, he tells them, and their faces both harden into battle mode. Yosh, exclaims Lee, fist pumping, as energetic as ever despite having literally just fought and kicked the ass of the one Sand Genin. What is our move? First explosion, says Tenten immediately, eyes darting to Niji to see if he disagrees, and he nods. They can probably do nothing for the Hokage. Randomly fighting the Sand Ninja, especially when, as Genin, they are more liable to get overlooked, seems like a poor decision when no one is actively attacking them and they don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Let's go, Niji replies, and they're off. Team Guy is fast. Everyone now knows how fast Lee is. He hasn't bothered to put his weights back on, but he's not going at top speed, keeping pace with his other two teammates, but they're all very fast. Even an exhausted Niji can move. Something is still holding up the level, and the Byakugan reveals it. The Akimichi from Team 10 is holding it up, Niji says, and his eyes narrow. I don't know how much longer he can continue. Nor is he alone, but Niji doesn't want to keep his Byakugan activated for long enough to see the details. He's too low on chakra. They weigh the options for a moment. The level is partially evacuated, but the genjutsu they had so easily ripped away, the other two members having long practiced freeing Lee from them, has sent the civilians into slumber. The Konoha ninja previously evacuating now fight the Sand Ninja, and they're definitely on a time limit here. He wishes, for one brief moment, that he had the ability to make as many clones as Naruto. Tenten speaks up. Niji, you're not in the best condition. He frowns at her. She's undeterred. Me and Lee will evacuate the civilians, you go check on Akimichi. She pulls out a small box, taking his hand and pressing it into his palm. Chakra pills. He might need them. You might need them. Go. Lee's already gone, having moved the moment he got his instructions, already proceeding to start roughly shaking civilians awake. Tenten darts off to follow. He heads for the stairs, and waits until he's 100% sure that Tenten can't see a single hair on his head before he, reluctantly, takes one of the pills. The rush of chakra is rejuvenating, and he heads down to where the Akimichi is. The site he emerges on, when he rounds to corner to where he had seen Akimichi, is a halted battlefield. Akimichi is just like how he had seen in his brief glimpse before, swelled to more than his normal size, towering over the other two in the room, giant, and holding up the floor above. Beads of sweat drip from his face, and Niji can tell he won't be able to hold it much longer. Sarutobi is one of the other people there, the sensei of Team 10, and he is, being held in place by Nara's shadow jutsu. Nara is sweating as well, struggling to hold his opponent in place. Hey, Hyuga, he snarks, gritting his teeth. That's not Asuma-sensei. Welcome to the party. Niji palms a kunao easily, throwing it towards Sarutobi. It passes through his shoulder as if it's not there, because it's not, embedding itself in the wall behind him. The transformation ripples and then fades. A white-haired teenager, 2 red dots upon his brow, no headband in sight, stands impassively before them, caught in the Nara's jutsu. He does not even seem remotely fazed by any of what's going on. I did not expect to fight another, he says, and then he moves. Hinata is with her team. Kiba knows this, cause Kiba's right next to her and she knows on the other side. I do not carry as many varieties of bugs as you think I do, Shino says. Why? Because I do not have that much carrying capacity. The Inyazuka grins. So are you telling me, he says, that if you were as fat as Chuji dash? Quiet, says Hinata, but definitely not meanly, and they both promptly shut up. Status. Shino says after a moment, and Hinata takes a moment to gather herself before speaking. The Hokage's surrounded by some sort of barrier, she says, shaking her head. I don't think we'll be much help there. Kiba makes a face. Akamaru whines. Saving the Hokage would have been real cool. Okay, what else? Sasuke is unconscious with Karen, she says, and she slumps over a little. I forgot to unseal his chakra. I was too focused on your fight, Shino, and then Niji. Well, she really didn't need to elaborate on Niji. All of Team 8 knew the details there, and Kiba presses up against her side a little. Shino inclines his head. You should not worry. Why? Because he is not fighting anyway. Kiba can't resist a snort, and Hinata turns red and shoves him a little bit, clearing her throat. And Naruto and Ino and Sakura are fighting the whole Sand team, she says, and Kiba whistles. They might need our help. Shino nods, but does ask. What of your cousin and his team? Hinata turns, just slightly, seriously, how does she process all that information at once at where everything is? It makes no sense to Kiba whatsoever. He's with his team, they're talking right now. So he's probably good, Kiba says, and he gets up, stretching, from where the three of them had been hunkered down behind some chairs. I vote on fighting the Sand team with the others. Akamaru barks in agreement. I second this, says Shino. Why? Because they are outnumbered. Hinata nods. Yes, I think that's. She doesn't quite get to finish her sentence before a familiar voice speaks up from behind them. That's a handy trick, the voice says, and holy shit, how had he managed to sneak up on them without Akamaru or Kiba noticing? The team whips around, Shino and Hinata jumping to their feet, only to relax as they see who it is. Just another Konoha genin. It's Kabuto. Sorry, he says, lifting his hands to show he carries no weapons. Not that it really means anything among ninja, he could grab a weapon in a second, but it's more the principle behind it. I was hiding, too, and I overheard you. Can I come with? Team 8 exchanges a look, and Kiba's the one who says something. No offense, he says, and okay, Kiba really means all the offense by that, but can you even fight? You kinda sucked in the exams, dude. He laughs, and it sounds very fake. I know I didn't make a good showing, yes. But that's because I'm a medical ninja. Kabuto shakes his head. I'd be no good against the Sand team, but maybe I can heal Sasuke and Sakura, or at least help a little bit. They exchange looks again, but as weird and off as Kabuto kinda makes him feel, and Akamaru wholeheartedly agrees, yipping quietly that the dude is fucking off. He is a Leaf genin, and he probably can help them out at least a little bit. Though wasn't he over with Team 7 before? Why did he leave? Okay, says Hinata, very quietly. Let's go. Kakashi never should have gotten up this morning. He had considered it, of course. Considered sleeping in or spending a few hours at the memorial stone just to make sure that he was hours late and wouldn't have to watch his students fight and possibly see one of them murdered right in front of him, but someone had knocked on his door that morning, exactly 1 hour before the matches started. He had answered the door, mostly out of curiosity. It was Sakura's mom. Hello, she had said. Sakura told me to make sure you were at the matches, right on time. Kakashi didn't, and still doesn't, know Sakura's mom's name, but she was and is a terrifying force of nature that reminds Kakashi of Kushina and had made sure that he had gotten here on time. And he didn't want to talk to Sakura before she was inevitably murdered and he had another grave to visit, so he hadn't gone to his students and had instead decided to hang out by the Hokage because God knows nothing ever happens up there but boring political talk which he can interrupt impolitely with his favorite little orange book. Which leads to this, because fuck his whole life. trapped in a pink barrier with the Hokage by his side and Orochimaru across from him. Fuck, Kakashi says, softly but with heartfelt emotion, and resolves to blame Sakura's mom if he dies here. Whatever her name is. Chapter 29, Konoha Crush, Part 2. The problem is, Ino thinks, is that her jutsu is too slow. It takes time for her to send chakra to an opponent, to take over their mind. Sure, she'll definitely get faster, but this is why she's not gonna make Chunin. Sakura better make Chunin, or Ino is personally going to sue the Hokage herself. Please let him be okay. She never thought she'd be worried about the Hokage, but she kind of is right now. Speaking of Sakura, she rubs her eyes next to her and pops a chakra pill into her mouth. Sakura, Ino says, and she side-eyes her. You're using another one. She waves her friend's concerns off. Don't worry, it's only my second. Don't poison yourself, forward girl. To be honest, though, Ino is more worried about Sakura's burns. Sakura is naturally darker than Ino, naturally darker than most of Konoha, but her skin is seared almost pure black. Like the color of Sasuke's hair. Her left arm and face are patchy, probably wherever she got hit, but her right arm is completely burnt, every single visible inch of skin marred by the lightning. It's also clear she's in pain, from the way she forces herself to her feet with a hiss. Before she can jump in and join the fight, though, try to keep Gaara still, Ino says. I'm trying to transfer minds with him. Sakura looks at her, wide-eyed. Are you sure that's a good idea? He's insane. Ino nods, grim. She knows. She knows all too well. I'm sure. Good luck, Ino pig. Good luck, forward girl. And Sakura joins the fray. Ino had been there when Gaara had attacked. All it was a simple visit to Chuji. A training screw-up, it happened to everyone. They all ended up in the hospital at one point or another, par for the course for a young ninja. Especially since Ino was pissed as hell they were the only genin team without not a single member in the third exam when everyone else had at least two, so they were training like maniacs. Shikamaru had went with her, of course, but ended up wandering down the hall to visit Naruto after a little bit. Apparently, he, too, was in the hospital. The two of them had been talking, chatting. Chuji was in as one of her best friends, so talking was easy, and then the door slid open. About time, she had started, expecting to see her teammate and maybe Naruto at the door, expecting more company for breaking Chuji out so they could all get lunch together, but it definitely wasn't her teammate. It was like the moment she met eyes with Gaara, she was choking on killing intent, unable to get a single drop of air in her lungs. Ino couldn't breathe, couldn't even twitch, and her heart felt like it was about to stop. Chuji got up. He was scared, he was so very scared, but Chuji was and is and will always be brave when it comes down to it. What are you doing? He asked. The killing intent stopped, as abruptly as it started, and Ino gasped in air and promptly tried not to choke on it and scrambled away to stand next to Chuji. They fell into fighting stances together, ready to flee, ready to do whatever it took to live through this. Is she your friend, too? Gaara asked, and Ino felt the hairs on the back of her neck go up. Yes, Chuji and Ino said at the exact same time, and they glanced at each other for the briefest of moments before looking back at Gaara. So you will not let me hurt her? No, said Chuji. I won't let you hurt him, either, said Ino. Gaara opened his mouth again to speak, and Ino had no idea what he could have said, what he would have said, because Asuma-sensei appeared behind Gaara in the open door. What's going on here? He asked. Ino said nothing. Chuji said nothing. Gaara said nothing, but turned to leave, Asuma stepping out of his way. They waited until he was gone, far enough down the hall that he wouldn't hear them, before Asuma-sensei turned back towards them. Everyone okay? They nodded. Sensei, Ino asked, and she swallows sharply, trying to find the words. Why is someone like that in the exams? She didn't need to clarify. Team 10 understood. It was politics, of course, but she hoped Asuma-sensei would clarify what kind of politics. He looked thoughtful. Bait, he had said. We're springing the trap. Hanabi loves her sister. It doesn't matter what father says about her, Hanabi loves Hinata, and thinks that Hinata is one of the best people ever. Not one of, no, the best. Maybe Hanabi is better at fighting. Maybe Niji is. But Hanabi can tell that Hinata holds back, even if she's not trying to, because she doesn't want to hurt Hanabi. Because Hinata is gentle and kind and way too good for all the things she has to do, and Hanabi loves her so much. She's glad that even if Hinata lost, the Uchiha showed her good respect, and maybe an Uchiha Hyuga alliance will make father warm towards Hinata. Hanabi loves her so much. So when Hanabi and father and Ko and all the other Hyuga surrounding them rip through the genjutsu and then start to either 1, fight or 2, evacuate, Hanabi's first thought is of her sister. Father, she cries out, and she grabs for his sleeve. Sister. And Niji. What about them? He looks at her like he cannot even believe she's asking this question, and she flinches back, just a little bit. Hanabi, he says, and it's with the stern almost patience that she's heard so many times. Do not worry. Go with Ko. But dash. Go. She's bundled into Ko's arms, into the Hyuga that once took care of Hinata and now takes care of her, and he clutches her to his chest and moves. SSH, he reassures her. Lady Hinata and Niji are strong. They will be fine. Sometimes it feels like Ko knows everything, but Hanabi knows that Ko is only 19, still a teenager even if he's not gonna be a teenager anymore in like, a month, so Hanabi knows that he doesn't actually know if they'll be fine. The little girl wipes at her eyes, trying not to sniffle, and shifts position so her chin rests on Ko's shoulder. It's not dignifying, being held like a baby when she is 7 years old, thank you very much, but it's dangerous so it's fine. She activates her Byakugan, trying to scout out her family in the hubbub, in the mess, and Ko pats her back. They'll be fine, Lady Hanabi, he tells her. The little girl hopes with all her might that he's right. Sakura is exhausted. Chakra ripples through her, fills her, but that doesn't change her bone-weary exhaustion and deep pain. She's having trouble with the movement of her right arm, she can't really move her fingers, and it makes her want to scream and throw up to try to force them into a hand sign, to wrap around a kunai. The only reason that she and Naruto aren't dead right now, she thinks, is because it looks like Gaara is rapidly spiraling out of control and lashing out at his allies, as well, who are very much trying to corral him, but it's a close thing. She's left Naruto to deal with that team, with all his clones, so it's Sakura versus their sensei. He looks almost pained to fight her. I don't want to kill you, he says, and Sakura guesses that hell, that's one of them. If you surrender, we won't hurt you. Sakura laughs, and it's a hysterical, broken thing. I'm already hurt, she says, and she throws a kunai at him with her left arm, he catches it, neatly, and Sakura can only think about how fucked she really is. I'm not going to let you hurt my friends. So be it, he says, and she literally cries out as she awkwardly dodges the kunai he throws back at her. He tosses a few more, and Sakura lets out a broken sob as she has to throw herself to the ground, landing on her bad arm. Tears stream down her cheeks, but she doesn't care, she doesn't care, she doesn't care, she doesn't care. She weeps as she forces her hands to flip through familiar hand signs, slamming down into the ground in front of her with a small cry as the ground springs up in front of her as a shield. And then she bolts, away from the Sand Genin, away from Ino, and she can hear him springing over the wall behind her, and what was the point if that didn't do anything? Sakura stumbles. Sakura falls. She feels like a child, weeping into the dirt as she tries to force herself up. Sakura's supposed to be a genin. Supposed to be an almost shinin. Supposed to be an adult, a grown-up, someone who fights the enemy and saves Konoha and her friends and never, ever is weak again. The little girl sits up, and her death hovers over her in the form of a sand genin. He's just doing his duty, his eyes seem to say, and Sakura can't help but think of the rock. The stone. The memorial thing that the exact name of escapes her because her mind is currently gibbering panic monkey brain. I'm gonna die, she thinks hysterically, and Kakashi-sensei won't be late to see me anymore. The kunai comes down and Sakura squeezes her eyes shut and Dian Mike entry. She opens her eyes just in time to see the crazy proctor from the second exam kick the sand genin in the face. Sakura gapes as the man goes flying, and Mitarashi Anko grins, licking her lips. Always wanted to do that, she says, and she turns back to wink at Sakura. You okay, kid? Sakura is not okay. She hurts so bad and she's so tired and she's got tears all of her cheeks, but she sniffles and wipes her eyes with her left hand and scrambles to her feet and nods. She's an adult. She's a shinobi. She's gonna be a Chunin and she needs to defend her village. Why yeah, Sakura rasps. I'm okay. Good, she says, as the Sand Jounin gets to his feet. Go help your friend, then. I've got him. And with that, Anko charges. Karin can't bring herself to watch the battle below. She can't bring herself to pay attention at all, even. Right now, she's focusing all of her attention on the writhing Sasuke. Brother, he gasps, and oh, Karin has to wonder what he's seeing, what nightmares caused by the seal are plaguing him. What does Orochimaru want with him, she wonders, and the ideas chill her. Sasuke may be standoffish and aloof, but he's part of Team 7 and part of Naruto's family, and that makes him part of Karin's family by association. She hasn't been here long, but Naruto means the world to her, and so does Sakura, and so does Team 10, and she guesses so does Sasuke, too. He can't die, not yet. Not when she barely knows him. Tears well up in her eyes, and she sniffles, and both of the Narutos with her bend down to hug her, one on either side. Hey, the one on her left says. Sasuke's too strong to let something like this take him out. Yeah, says the other one, on her right, bravado in its voice that she doesn't think the clone is truly feeling. Aren't you really good at healing, Karin? You've got it. I believe it. Before this, Karin had never wanted to heal again in her life. She had never wanted to ever use her abilities again, just a simple civilian was enough for her. But now, she wishes that Sasuke was even slightly conscious so she could let him bite her and get himself back up again. Karin? Naruto, says a voice that Karin only barely recognizes, and she half turns. She hasn't been able to sense anything, sense anyone, her abilities so very overpowered by the deep, terrifying chakra from below that make her wonder if maybe there's another demon, maybe Gaara is the same as Naruto. It means she's surprised by the voice behind her. It's Hinata. Karin barely knows her, hasn't ever talked to her aside from that very brief show of support earlier, that feels like another life altogether, but she knows that Hinata is an ally. The person behind Hinata, though, makes Karin clamber to her feet, a Naruto on either side, every one of the three brandishing a kunao and glaring. You. Kabuto simply smiles. Me. Chapter 30, Konoha Crush, Part 3. Lord Hokage, Kakashi says, trepidation in his voice. Shouldn't we be stopping that? Sarutobi shakes his head. There's no stopping that jutsu, he says darkly. The three coffins rise ominously from the ground, and Kakashi hangs back. It's galling, to stand here and let Orochimaru do whatever creepy shit he's doing, because it's always creepy shit with Orochimaru, but Kakashi trusts Sarutobi's opinion on his former student's jutsu. If he says it can't be stopped, that hanging back is the best reaction at this point, Kakashi is going to listen. He feels like he's 15 again, as it is, facing down the sun in and freezing up. He won't freeze this time. To summon those people, Sarutobi mutters, and Kakashi glances at him from the corner of his eye. Like, hell, maybe it'd be good to let him know what's going on. He'd like to hit his 30s, please. Or at minimum, see all of his team become teenagers. He could live with that much. The coffins fall open, one by one. The doors just falling to the ground, nothing connecting them to the chambers behind. Out steps Senju Hashirama. He died before Kakashi was born, died before he ever got to meet him, but he's the spitting image of his face on the mountain. The second coffin reveals Senju Tobirama. Again, not someone the Jounin ever got to meet, but he would be about Naruto's level of intelligence if he couldn't recognize the second Hokage. Actually, he'd be surprised if Naruto couldn't recognize the previous Hokages, given his obsession with obtaining the title. So maybe that's an insult to his rather thick-headed student. The third coffin makes Kakashi's heart stop. Minato-sensei, he breathes, and it's him. He looks less vibrant, less colorful, so very clearly not his living self that it hurts him deep inside, but it's his teacher. He smiles, just a little. Kakashi, he says. You look well. Kakashi doesn't feel 15 anymore. He feels 14, 13, 12, no, 5 years old. He wants nothing more but to tell his sensei that no, he's not doing well, he hasn't ever been doing well, but okay, yeah, now that he has 3, 4, little minions that cling to him like limpets, he has been doing a bit better. The Jounin clears his throat. Ah, so. Minato blinks, startled, and oh, he was so different 12 years ago, wasn't he? But then softens. I'm glad. I didn't do right by you, and I'm sorry. Kakashi shakes his head. No, Minato-sensei. You did your best. Kakashi is now all of 27 years old, 3 years older than his sensei ever got to be, and he realizes how much Minato-sensei had no idea what he was doing. When Minato became Kakashi's teacher, he was 15 years old. 15. Kakashi remembers what he was like when he was 15, and he really had no idea how to even function as a human being, let alone care for a traumatized little 5-year-old murder tyke, so he understands. Maybe Minato-sensei didn't make all the best choices, but he tried his best, and Kakashi understands that. Well, isn't this touching, drawls Orochimaru, and Kakashi tenses up. Having this conversation across the battlefield maybe isn't the smartest thing to do in front of the enemy, but it's not like he's ever going to have a chance to talk to Minato-sensei again. Everything Orochimaru does? Still creepy. So very creepy. Minato glances back to half glare at him. Can he move from his position? It doesn't seem like it, and then absolutely ignores him, and the hand signs that Orochimaru is flipping through. Is Naruto alright? He asks. Kakashi nods. He's on my team, Minato-sensei. He just won his Chunin exam battle. He's happy. Good, Minato-sensei says, fierce and proud, and then he's gone. Steam rises from the bodies of each of the Hokage, and they look healthier. The color comes back to them, and Minato looks so much like he did in life, so real, but there's no life to his eyes. No brightness, no shine of the Minato he knows and saw just a moment ago. You too, Orochimaru says, smiling that horrible smile of his. Seriously, Kakashi owes Anko so many drinks for putting up with this guy for years. It's time you learn the joy of hurting the one you call sensei. And then the three rush them. Sarutobi is pale, watching the two Senju brothers circle around him, and Kakashi barely gets a Kunao up in time to block Minato, Kunao against Kunao, strength against strength, staring his puppet of a teacher right in the eyes. He looks so real. How can Kakashi even begin to fight him? Tenten is worried. See, she's normally not a worrier. At all. She has Team Guy and her older brother. Those are the only real important people in her lives. All guys. It's horrible. It's terrible. She needs some gal friends stat. Worrying about Guy or Lee is just, why? Why would you do that? What is going to happen to them? She doesn't usually worry about Neji, because he's like a prodigy and all that, and her brother is a special Jounin, so really, she's surrounded by pretty powerful dudes. But she's worried now. All the students of Team Guy are exhausted, Neji in particular. Lee is bouncing around at super speed without his weights, but she knows that won't last long. That Uzumaki kid beat Neji into the ground, and it took Tenten every single ounce of herself to beat Shino. If she hadn't worked as hardcore as she did on hand-to-hand this past month, she might have lost. Lee calls Tenten, and her teammate zips over, a blur of green that she can barely identify in motion. We've got this cleared out. Move on to the next section, help more civilians evacuate, and I'll tell Akimichi he can let the floor down. Lee salutes, God, he's such a dweeb. She loves him for it. Yosh. I will continue to wake and evacuate the civilians. If I finish, I will find you. Tenten doesn't even remotely think he'll finish because there are so many civilians here, but yeah, sure, if he manages it, come find her. She nods, and he's off. With that, Tenten turns to sprint. She's not sure how much time Akimichi has, and even if he's got plenty of time, the less time he exhausts himself holding up a floor that is now, thankfully, empty, the better. There are sound and sand ninja everywhere, and the only reason she's not fighting any right now is because her brother swung by and drop-kicked a few in the face for her. "Stay safe, lil sis," he told her, stabbing a senbon through one of her hair buns for safekeeping, and he was gone. Tenten just has to trust in her heart that he's okay. "Akimichi," she yells, as she rounds the corner, and then she stops because what, holy shit. It's only her time and team guy, in her crazy beautiful team that moves at top speed at all times, that lets her take in the sight as fast as she can. Akimichi, holding up the ceiling. Niji and Nara, barely managing to avoid getting speared by some teenager who is growing bones out of his body. That's such a handy homemade weapon if you can pull them out, is her first thought. Tenten has accepted that she is just as insane as the rest of her team. It's okay. Everyone freezes and blinks at each other for a moment and well, okay, Tenten's taking her chance. "Akimichi," she yells again. "We evacuated the floor. Let it drop." And then she yanks the senbon from her hair, uncaring as she pulls out the entire bun, and lets it fly. Her aim is true. She hits him straight in the neck as the entire ceiling falls around them. Ino doesn't want to wait. Shino and Kiba have joined the fray, and it's Naruto, Sakura, Shino, and Kiba against the sand team. The crazy proctor has shown up to take care of the teacher. Angara is slowly slipping more and more out of control and Ino needs to stop this right now. She's not a physical fighter. She's not at all. She lost to Sakura, and even if her friend made a terrifyingly good showing in the last test, Sakura isn't a powerhouse. Or wasn't. Everything is topsy-turvy now and Ino has no idea how to measure literally anyone, and she doesn't like it. Ino is pretty sure that she'll be useless if she dives into the fray, but she also can't do nothing. Sakura stumbles, barely dodging a swipe from the Sand Genin's puppet, and Ino takes her chance. "Shino, you handle him," she yells, because Shino cleaned the dude's clock last time and even if now is slightly different, she's pretty sure Shino can hold his own, and she goes in. She grabs Sakura by the back of her shirt, she doesn't want to touch the other girl's hand, and hauls her away. She, terrifyingly enough, doesn't protest. Ino yanks her friend away from the battle, no one stops them, thank God, none of the Sand Genin pay them any mind, because Gaara's having some freaky conversation with himself, and over to the wall. Sakura slumps down, immediately, and oh God Ino's heart hurts to see that she's been crying. "Horrid girl," Ino says, and she's never been more firm on a single thing in her whole life. "No more fighting." The other girl shakes her head. "Ino, I can't dash." Sakura. The use of her name makes her snap into focus, meeting Ino's eyes. "Please. We've got this, I promise. I can take him out." Sakura smiles, just a little, her eyes welling up with tears. "I know you can, Ino. It feels like goodbye. It feels like a terrifying sort of goodbye," and Ino reaches out to brush a strand of Sakura's hair away from her face. "You've blossomed into a really beautiful flower," she tells her, and then Ino stands up. Waiting on the outskirts for Gaara to be still, for her slow chakra to travel fast enough, no. Ino doesn't have that kind of time, doesn't have that kind of patience. It won't work. But the closer she is, the less distance there is between her and Gaara, the less time it will take for her to take control. The less that chakra has to travel. The sooner she can do this. Ino reaches up, pulls her hair out of its bun, lets it flow freely to her shoulders. If she's gonna do this, she thinks, she's gonna make it amazing. She shakes her head, a simple toss of her hair, and she dives in. Ino skips around the Naruto clones, ducks underneath the Sand Genin's fan, neatly avoids an elbow to the face courtesy of Kiba, or was that Akamaru, and then stands across from Gaara. He's muttering, the crazy glass slowly spreading across the rest of his face, across the rest of his body. He's terrifying, like force of nature kind of terrifying, but Ino's got him. No one else is going to be hurt by him. Not like how Sakura was. He glances up and he looks at her. She's even gazed. He looks absolutely batshit. "Mother, he whispers, rasps, and what, you? I am not your mother, she tells him. Inhale, exhale. Ino charges him, her hands held out in front of her in the familiar hand seal. Mind transfer jutsu, she yells, and he whips out his freakish glass arm to swing at her, but before it connects, before she plows right into him or he plows right into her, or contact is made, her body hits the ground, empty. Transfer complete. Check the description for the links to the author.